Well, it's that time in the program again when I get to bring Tim Gunn back on stage. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about a program that we have here at the Cooper Hewitt. It's called the Design Scholars Program. It's a year-long program and an intensive experience for people like you who are interested in design. We have hands-on workshops, we have studio visits, and a lot of other great opportunities to help you prepare for a career in design. So from that program, I have two young teens, Layla and Woody, who are going to lead our conversation today with Tim Gunn. Layla and Woody, would you join me up on stage? So they represent you all, and they're going to ask Tim several questions. After they ask their questions, I will be asking the questions that you've posted on Instagram. So if you would take a seat, and with this, I'd love to welcome Tim back to stage.
So Woody and Layla, why am I so nervous?
I'm just as nervous as you. I think I'm a little more nervous.
We're all nervous.
So, we were just talking about you and going into education for architecture originally, and I was wondering why you chose architecture in the first place and how you moved on from there.
I have been an architecture nut my entire life, I have to tell you, and as a kid, you couldn't separate me from my Legos. And I have always been obsessed with floor plans, architectural drawings, elevation plans, and my dream was to be an architect. I was telling Woody and Layla earlier, when I did go to architecture school, and I only lasted a semester, it was in the olden days, before computers were even in anybody's imagination. So the presentation drawings that were required meant that you had to first sketch something in pencil and then take an eyedropper with India ink in it and drop it into a stylus and pull the stylus across a straight edge. And if you weren't 1,000% attentive, that ink would bleed. And if the ink bled, you had to start all over again. And I thought, this is the quickest route to a mental breakdown that I can possibly imagine. So it was only one semester for me. And then I stayed in a creative field, but something that was quite the antithesis. I ended up studying literature and eventually art and design, and I ended up being a sculpture major. Though I also told Woody and Layla that after I graduated, I supported myself by building architectural models for three firms in Washington, D.C. So it all came full circle in a manner of speaking. And I use this by way of demonstration. It's life's serendipitous path. You don't know where it's going to take you. And if something truly is not working out, it's not a lifetime commitment. Move on to something else. I'm not saying abandon things at the drop of a hat. It's a matter of really carefully and thoughtfully considering all the possibilities and also considering the path that you've already been on. But it's exciting to think that you're not at this juncture necessarily offering up a prescription for how you're going to spend the rest of your life. You're sponges, you're absorbing, you're synthesizing, hopefully, you're asking lots of questions, and you're intensely curious. And the prospect of landing somewhere that you don't anticipate, for me, even though it's filled with a little bit, if not a lot, of fear, anxiety, it's a very exciting prospect. So enjoy it.
I wanted to ask, sort of just, I guess, along the line with following your path and just seeing where life takes you as in terms of a designer, and what was a challenging moment in your career that you faced and came out stronger?
I can't think of a single juncture in all the things that I've done that haven't been an incredible challenge. and that haven't potentially derailed me. I mean, the first, well, before I became a full-time teacher, I had a taste of it. I was a teaching assistant to my mentor in art and design school, and she had invited me to assist her in an intensive summer program for high school students, and I loved it. I mean, I loved being in her shadow. I loved working with her intensely, and it was an incredible experience. And 2 weeks after that, she called me to say that she had a faculty member drop out at the last minute, and would I please teach three-dimensional design? Well, I wasn't going to say no. I didn't want to disappoint her. I was thrilled by the summer experience, but that first day of teaching with that very different commitment and being alone as the teacher in the studio, I'll be blunt. Every morning that week, I threw up in the school's parking lot, and my knees shook so badly in the studio that I had to brace myself with my back against the wall, because if I were to step away from the wall, my knees were shaking so badly I would topple over. So I thought, well, I can't possibly go on like this. Talk about another quick route to a nervous breakdown. So that Friday, I made an appointment to see my mentor. Her name was Rona. And I'd rehearsed what I was going to say, which was, you're going to have to find someone else to do this because I can't go on like this. So I was sitting opposite her in her office and delivered my rehearsed speech. And she looked at me and said, I understand, and I trust that this experience will either kill you or cure you. And I'm counting on the latter. Good day. So I thought, oh no, I've got to come back again on Monday and do this all over again. And who knew I'd become a career teacher, 29 years. So you work through these things. It's good to have someone to put pressure on you. And it's also good to feel a sense of pride in what you deliver and in what you do, to say, I need to rise to this occasion. I can't just slump over and shrink away. But that's upon reflection. We know it ended up working out. Sometimes things don't work out. So you have to use judgment, experience, and at the same time, not fear failure. It's very important.
One question I did want to ask is, now that you have like a successful career as an educator and as a fashion icon and everything on Project Runway, do you ever get to have me time in your personal life?
Do I ever get to have me time? Well, I do. I call it heal and repair time. I'm very, very lucky. I will complain about absolutely nothing. I thank my lucky stars every day, and I knock wood every day. I will add this: I only do what I have to do. I don't necessarily do what I want to do. And that gives me a lot of heal and repair time. And it's good to shore yourself up for the next experience, because you need to be on. I said something earlier about giving 1,000%. You don't want to sleepwalk through life. You want to be fully at full attention. You want to be able to listen, be able to respond, be able to participate, to build relationships, and you need to feel, I'll repeat, shored up that you're able to do that. It's very important. It's about being a good citizen of the world.
So I guess along the lines of you having me time and your personal life, what you think one misconception that people first have when meeting you, or when they have when working with you?
Well, I know what the misconception people have when they first meet me. They think I'm going to be judgmental about what they're wearing. And nothing could be further from the truth. I'm always talking about the importance of clothing, but I put it in this context. Clothing is a form of semiotics. It sends a message about how the world perceives us. And like it or not, it's simply true. And all that I ask is that we each accept responsibility for how we're presenting ourselves. But I would never be judgmental. If someone on the other side of the room is dressed as a circus clown, maybe they are. You know, I believe in pummeling people with questions to fully understand where they're coming from. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, nice. So one question I want to ask for the teens out here is, as a teen going to arts and design and wanting to have a career in design, how important do you think support was from friends, family, or from anybody else? Like, did you get much support, and how important do you think that is?
Oh, I was very lucky. I received a lot of support. Very lucky. Though I will say, my grandmother used to say about my interest in architecture, especially when I was intent upon studying it at the college level, she used to say to me, "You do such nice things with your hands. Why don't you become a surgeon?" So she was wishing for another direction. But life is a big collaboration. We don't go through life alone. And we need people around us who help buoy us up, who are truth tellers in a way that's beneficial. I mean, when it comes to truth telling, I'm happy to talk to you about anything that you could potentially change. I will never talk to you about things that you can't change, ever. I mean, it's simply not useful. We need a support structure, and we need people with good karma and who are healthy in terms of the chemical makeup either between us or among us. We don't need people who are poisonous and will potentially poison us. So it's important to surround yourself with people you can rely on, but I repeat, these are not enablers. These are people who can be truth tellers and can help set you steady and right if in fact you're going off and wrong.
I would also like to ask if you've ever had a mentor, somebody who just was really strong and also supporting you and just
you looked up to or something.
I've been very, very lucky throughout all of my adult life and most of my adolescent life. I've had really wonderful, supportive mentors. And I'll repeat that this means people who give you tough love and are truth tellers and who won't put up with your nonsense. That's a good mentor. A mentor isn't someone who just pats you on the head and says, "Layla, you're the most fabulous person ever." Maybe you are. We've just met. But that's not especially useful. People who make us confront our demons, people who allow us to look at ourselves critically and objectively, while still being there in support, are very important to our lives and to making us into the best people we can be. And I believe that very, very strongly from my own experiences. So yes, many mentors.
Question. What's one advice that you always give people, especially teens, aspiring teens that wants to go into the...
Oh, this bit of advice is not very popular, but here it is. The world owes you nothing. That can be tough to hear. You need to make your own way. You need to establish your own values and accept responsibility for your actions and where life's serendipitous path does take you. It's important not to play the victim, blame others. The world owes you nothing. And I meet a lot of young people, including my nephew, it can be in the family, who just believes that that simply isn't true and that eventually people will realize, in my nephew's case, his greatness and how he must work for them. And I say, go out and pound the pavements, make yourself known, and you do the job of making people feel that you are critical and indispensable. So that's my advice. And also assume nothing. Assume nothing.
Yeah. Thanks. So now that we've talked about the past, I like to talk about current stuff.
Sure.
Is there any current artists, current designers that you would like to speak of that you have taken interest upon lately?
I was just about to ask that question.
Well, I mean, I want to say about all the design professionals in this room, how thrilling for all of you to have this level of exposure. Because these are individuals, if you were applying for a job with their firm, that you may not even see them within the first round of interviews. So, I mean, I'm constantly inspired and in awe, to be perfectly honest, by the creative work around us. And I will add, especially in these very trying times, both nationally and globally, to consider what designers achieve. And I'm going to put artists in the same category, though I have much more of a heartfelt empathy for what designers do because it's such critical problem solving that helps the world in so many ways. But it's really about bearing witness to the triumph of the human spirit. And if that sounds rather grand, it is. It is about taking existing conditions and circumstances, about examining through a lens that is has everything to do with the current society and culture in which we live, and how do you come up with solutions that work under all these terms and conditions. It's incredibly complex, incredibly demanding, and I think the most exciting and exhilarating work anyone can do, ever. So I'm constantly inspired.
What do you think is, sorry, currently, what do you think is the differences between, from when you were coming up, sort of going into fashion, as young designers are currently going up in now?
Well, today people are much more environmentally aware and concerned, and much more aware and concerned with social issues, sustainability issues, accessibility issues. That there's more of a societal conscience today that I absolutely applaud. I mean, it's not just about a pretty dress. I mean, we want the dress to be pretty, but it's about so many other aspects that are critical to our moving forward as humanity. And I'm thrilled with that.
Yeah, and on that note, how do you see the world coming together in a way where multiple different disciplines come together in some ways? Because I see a lot of like globalism affects how different industry comes together and like kind of blend in a way where like fashion designers are not just fashion designers anymore, but they're using different aspects of other disciplines to design as well. Like,
and collaborating with
Yeah.
designers in other disciplines. Oh, I couldn't be more excited about it because it breaks the old world mold that we've been dealing with for so many decades. And because when you consider most of these disciplines, though, we've been building things and making tools and putting up signage and making clothes for millennia, the formalization of it, in a manner of speaking, is relatively new. I mean, it's when you look at the timeline of mankind, it's a blip. So the fact that we're on this new threshold where, and it's already happening, where there is a blending of disciplines and people aren't restrained to one particular discipline, where will this take us? We don't know, and that's what's thrilling and exciting. And I'm envious that all of you are going to be participants in this and help lead it. Very exciting.
Tim, I have some questions for you from
Oh, I thought you were
social
about to
media
dismiss
as well.
me, Ruthie. All right, Tim, I have some bad news. You've got to go.
Not yet. Not that fast. So we have some great questions from social media. Does enthusiasm, passion, and eagerness to learn supersede experience in a job interview?
Well, let me answer this way. If you have job experience and you don't have enthusiasm and eagerness and what was the other word? Passion, then forget about it. Who wants an experienced old sot?
Okay. What impact have you seen Project Runway have on the lives of the designers in the show?
Well, Project Runway has given these designers a great opportunity. How they use it is completely up to them, and it's a launching pad of sorts. It's a threshold that is an opportunity, and I applaud and cheer their successes, the scale of which can vary considerably according to their ambitions and their resources. We all know that all the design industries are very challenging, but fashion, particularly in the scope of the fairly recent economic downturn and retail calamity, was particularly hard hit. And there are a lot of brand names and designers that people looked to and were inspired by for quite a while that are now gone. It's a much tougher playing field. But I'll repeat, not just for fashion, I believe for all the design disciplines. And that's a good thing for all of you and each of you, because this is motivation to have a voice as a designer, to know who you are, to know who your constituents are, and to know the kind of mark that you want to make on this incredibly diverse set of disciplines. It should be a motivator.
Okay. How do you make the most of an internship that doesn't seem quite educational at first?
Well, I would say to my own students in fashion, never have just one internship, because you will extrapolate from that experience that this is what the industry is like. And quite frankly, at least in my experience in fashion, every firm has its own culture. And the more of those experiences that you have, and I advise having 3 or 4, the broader your understanding of the diversity of an industry within a single discipline will be. And you'll also realize you can make your own mark. I mean, you will determine if you're leading something, and I trust that each of you will eventually. Your DNA informs that company. And it's important to know. I would hope that you subscribe to wanting a healthy work environment and one that's supportive of people, still being truth-telling. But that's all part of being healthy. It's about telling it like it is, and allowing people to self-correct, and rewarding those who are doing exceptional work. So I'll repeat about the last question. This should all be a motivator, but don't extrapolate from a single situation. Even if it's a fabulous one, it may be a rarity.
Well, Tim, any last words of advice for this group?
Be tenacious in whatever it is you want to do. If you need to be like a weeble. If someone knocks you, you won't even know what weebles are. If someone knocks you over, you need to bounce right back up. These disciplines, I'm just going to be blunt in a truth-telling way, there is no room for crybabies. You can cry on your own when you get home, but don't whine around your classrooms or studios or your office. And take initiative, be curious, and I just have to say, it's so easy to fall into a pattern of, self-admonishment and being overly critical. know what you're good at and hone those strengths, and the things that you're not as strong at, work on them. Work on them, really. I have become a student recently. 2 years ago, at age 62, I took up fencing, which if any of you are fencers or have engaged in it in any way, it's incredibly demanding, both physically and mentally. And there are things that I'm kind of good at. There's nothing I'm great at yet. But I'm going to get there. But there are things I'm really bad at, and I'm working on it. And I'm, in many ways, though I've taught forever, being a student, though I consider myself a student of the world, but this is a very different experience where I have a teacher I'm answerable to, and who has certain expectations of me and has given me certain expectations of myself. You need to rise to the occasion. This is where qualities of character are so very, very, very important. And I believe in karma. I believe that what we give out, we get back. And there are cases where people navigate the world with very poor qualities of character. I believe it comes back eventually. It just does. And there have been some recent cases of that. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry to say necessarily. I'm sorry for all the circumstances around it. But be a good citizen of the world. It will be good back to you.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for all the great advice.
Thank you, Wookie. And Layla, Woody, thank you. Lovely. And best wishes to all of you here. We expect great things from you.